When the first call came after midnight, I should have let it ring. In our quiet town of Willows Reach, phone calls after dark never brought good news. I stared at the old rotary phone on my grandmother's kitchen wall, watching the dial spin back and forth like a hypnotic eye. The bell's urgent ringing bounced off the cracked plaster and faded floral wallpaper, filling the house with a sharp, metallic echo. "Don't answer that," my grandmother warned from her rocker, her eyes never leaving the dancing shadows cast by the lamp. "It's past midnight. Nothing on the other end but trouble." I could have listened, but curiosity wrapped its fingers around my wrist, and before I knew it, the receiver was in my hand, heavy and cool. "Hello?" At first, there was nothing but static, a faint hissing like wind through dry corn stalks. Then, a whisper, barely audible beneath the crackling, like someone on the other side of a long hallway leaning toward an unseen phone. "It's started again," the voice said. "Don't let them ring a second time." A chill crawled up my spine. "Who is this?" The line went dead. I turned to my grandmother for an explanation, but she was staring at the phone, her jaw clenched. The clock on the wall ticked just a second past midnight, yet it felt as though hours had passed. Outside, the October wind sighed through the cottonwoods, carrying the scent of damp leaves and river mud. In Willows Reach, there were stories older than the roads and as deep as the river. Stories about a bell that never hung in any church tower, but rang when darkness reached out its hand. "No one has called that phone in 10 years, my grandmother whispered. "Not since the last time the bell rang." Willows Reach sat on a peninsula carved by the dark waters of the Blackthorn River. Founded by my ancestors in the 1700s, it was a town that never truly moved forward. Wooden storefronts leaned into narrow streets lined with hitching posts, and lamplights glowed amber in foggy nights. The modern world, with its highways and neon, circled around us, but never breached the town line. People said we liked it that way. In truth, few dared leave, and those who did seldom returned. Our isolation wasn't chosen. It was enforced by something unseen, old as the river and relentless as the tides. As children, we played hide-and-seek among the sugar maples and told stories about the midnight bell, the unseen bell that supposedly echoed through the town on certain nights, calling people out of their homes. It rang when the fog rolled in thick and low, when the moon hid behind clouds, and the usual chorus of crickets and tree frogs went silent. In those moments, it was said, the river whispered louder, and shadows cast by nothing stretched across the cobblestones. Adults dismissed the tales, though their eyes flicked nervously to the forest when the wind whistled through the chimneys. My grandmother's face, carved with wrinkles and stories, hardened. She stood slowly and shuffled to the phone, pressing her palm against the receiver as if feeling for warmth. "We made a mistake," she said quietly. "I thought it was over." "What is over?" I asked, my voice thin. Instead of answering, she took my hand. "I need to show you something." We climbed the narrow stairs to the attic, the boards groaning under our weight. The air up there was thick with dust and memories. Old trunks were stacked under the sloping roof, each filled with lace dresses, yellowed letters, and iron tools. In a corner, under a threadbare quilt, sat a wooden box bound with a leather strap. My grandmother knelt and undid the strap with trembling fingers. Inside the box, wrapped in faded newspaper, lay a small brass bell. Its handle was carved bone, smooth from countless hands. The bell's mouth was dented, as though something had struck it repeatedly. It was heavier than it looked. When my grandmother lifted it, a muffled thud traveled through the attic floor, and for a moment the shadows around us seemed to listen. "This belonged to the first settlers," she said, "but they did not bring it from Europe. According to the ledger, they found it on the riverbank, half buried in silt and weeds. They did not recognize the writing etched along the rim, letters that still defy translation. They thought it was a gift or sign, so they hung it in the town square. The first time it rang, a boy disappeared." I swallowed hard. "Where did he go?" "No one knows. People searched the river, the forests, and the limestone caves. They called his name until their voices were raw. He was never found. A week later, the bell rang again. That time, it took a man. They tore it down and hid it away, hoping to break whatever curse it carried. But the ringing continued, faint and distant, from no fixed point. People began to draw curtains tight at midnight, to cover mirrors and whisper prayers. It stopped eventually, as if the thing behind it had fallen asleep. Until 10 years ago. "I remember," I said. I'd been 6. There was a thunderstorm that night, and over the roar of rain we all heard a clear, sharp peal. My parents left to investigate, promising to be back by dawn. They never returned. I'd been told they drowned in the river, but I never believed it entirely. I still saw them in dreams, standing on the opposite bank, waving for me to cross. Grandmother nodded. "We thought removing the bell was enough. We were wrong. The curse is bound to the river, to the land. And now, with that phone call, it's awake. It will not be satisfied until it takes what it is owed." "What does it want?" "Lives." The next night, the fog rolled in thick as wool. It crept through the alleys and wrapped the town in damp silence. The usual flicker of lanterns behind curtains seemed dimmer. People were afraid to look out their windows. At midnight, the first toll echoed through the air, not from the attic, but from everywhere and nowhere. The sound was clear and deep, like a bell with a cracked heart. It made my teeth ache. I pressed my hands against my ears, but the sound vibrated in my bones. Outside, footsteps shuffled across the cobblestones. Through a slit in the curtains, I saw neighbors stepping into the street, their eyes blank, their movements slow. They moved toward the river with a strange, unhurried purpose. Someone pounded on the door. "Do not open it!" Grandmother warned. The pounding stopped. "The pounding stopped. The bell calls to those it chooses," she said. "They will leave their homes and walk to the water, and once they wade into the river will not let them go." "Can't we stop them?" I cried. "We tried. 10 years ago we tried to chain their ankles, to hide them in cellars. Doors opened, chains broke. Some said they saw shapes in the fog, guiding the chosen ones. We lost more than those who were taken. We lost hope." As the ringing intensified, a memory surfaced. In the days after my parents vanished, while adults whispered and planned, I had wandered down to the river. I remembered the way the water flowed backward for a moment, swirling around a shadow. I remembered a figure standing at the river's bend, not quite human and not entirely tree. Its limbs were long, tapering into the river like roots. Its head hung low, and dripping moss clung to its shoulders. Its eyes glowed like distant lanterns. When it saw me, it tilted its head and seemed to listen. Then the bell rang, and it sank beneath the water, leaving only ripples and a feeling of being watched. I swallowed. "I saw something at the river before. Something alive. Grandmother inhaled sharply. So did I. So have others. Some call it a guardian, others a hunter. I believe it is the one who rings the bell. It is bound to it, like the tide to the moon. And we are bound to both. We did not sleep that night. The ringing continued, and by dawn, 12 people were gone, their tracks leading to the riverbank and ending at the water's edge. No boats were taken. No footprints led away. The river flowed on, indifferent. The town gathered in the community hall, a clapboard building that smelled of varnish and pine. Faces were pale, voices low. Old Mrs. Thompson, who had lost her son, clutched a rosary and whispered prayers between sobs. Sheriff Barnes, a broad man who believed in little but his shotgun, slammed his fist on the table.
We can't keep watching our people walk to their deaths,
he growled.
We need to do something.
What? Shoot the fog? Someone muttered.
Drain the river,
another suggested. An old map hung on the wall, depicting our town, the river, and the dense forest beyond. My eyes were drawn to a scribble in the corner, a note, almost faded completely.
Check the ledger,
I whispered, the words escaping before I realized.
It might have a clue.
The ledger was as old as the town, its pages brittle. In the entry for the year 1781, beneath the notation about the bell, was a line written in a different hand. No church may ring a bell at midnight in Willows Reach. No bell rung by man shall drown out the bell from below.
There,
I said, pointing.
It's a law. They forbade any midnight bell ringing, except ours.
Sheriff Barnes scratched his beard.
Maybe we can drown out the cursed bell with a bell of our own. Build something larger, louder. Or bring in a church bell,
Reverend Mills whispered.
One that rings with faith instead of doom.
Grandmother shook her head. No bell rung by man shall drown out the bell from below. That's the warning. What if it's not rung by man? I said. What if it's rung by the river? They stared at me as though I'd suggested we sacrifice sheep. I felt my cheeks burn. Hear me out. The curse is tied to the river, right? The thing ringing the bell lives there. What if we offer it something else? Another bell thrown into the water to change the call. If the river rings it, it might confuse the creature, Grandmother whispered. It might change who it calls. Or stop it, I said. It sounded absurd, yet desperation breeds creativity. The town's blacksmith, Mr. Albright, volunteered to make a bell. He stayed up nights, forging and shaping, pouring his sorrow into the metal. By the third night, when the fog rolled in again, he stood by the river holding a bell bigger than any church's. Its handle was forged from the iron of plowshares, its mouth etched with prayers in English and Latin. We attached it to a rope and lowered it gently into the Blackthorn. The water closed around it with a sucking sound. At midnight, the cursed bell rang out once again, its tones slicing through the fog. But a heartbeat later, another sound followed. A lower, deeper resonance that seemed to come from beneath our feet. The water churned, and the river rang the bell we had given it. The two bells clanged in discordant harmony, their vibrations crashing against each other like waves. The people standing at their doors wavered. Some turned away from the river and stumbled back inside. Others kept walking, but slower, as though confusion had crept into their bodies. The fog swirled violently, and through it, I glimpsed the figure from my childhood. It stood in the water up to its knees, its elongated arms reaching for the bell we had cast into its realm. It lifted the bell and shook it furiously,
as though fighting against something pulling it in another direction. The sound was deafening. I fell to my knees, hands pressed to my ears. The ground shook, and the air tasted of copper. Then, with a deep groan, the creature hurled the human bell back onto the shore. It landed with a dull thud, the handle snapping. The river's bell rang once more, clear and unchallenged. The last of the sleepwalkers disappeared into the water. We were left with silence and the knowledge that we had angered whatever lay beneath the river. In the days that followed, things changed. The fog did not wait for midnight. It crept into town during lunch, during morning chores, curling around ankles and hiding the river's edge. Animals left their pens and followed it, never to be seen again. The water level rose, flooding the lower streets. I watched as small objects, stones, sticks, even a child's toy boat, were pulled toward the river as if drawn by invisible threads. It was as though the boundary between land and river was dissolving. Rumors spread faster than the fog. Some claimed to hear whispers beneath the floorboards. Others woke to find their dreams soaked in muddy water. The sheriff tried to organize a caravan to leave, but wagons sank in the mud, and horses refused to move when they reached the bridge. A superstition took hold. Do not speak the river's name after sunset. Do not hum melodies that mimic the bell, and never, under any circumstances, follow the sound that sometimes drifted from the woods. A lullaby in a language none of us knew. In my grandmother's house, I studied the brass bell from the attic. Its surface was tarnished but warm, as though it held a slow, steady pulse. The etchings along its rim seemed to shift if I stared too long. I traced them with my finger and felt a tingle that traveled up my arm. What if the answer is here? I asked grandmother. What if we're supposed to ring this bell at a different time, for a different reason? She looked at me as though torn between hope and fear. The last time someone rang it, lives were taken. But perhaps the curses are connected. Perhaps what was once a beacon became a lure. We decided, foolishly or bravely, to test the theory. At exactly noon, when the sun stood high and the shadows were short, we carried the brass bell to the river. A small crowd gathered, curiosity outweighing caution. The river looked ordinary in the daylight, muddy brown, moving lazily. The air was thick with humidity and gnats. I lifted the bell and hesitated. My pulse pounded in my ears. If anything happens, I whispered to grandmother, run. She squeezed my hand. Together. With a breath, I rang the bell.
Its sound was nothing like the midnight toll. It was bright, clear, almost joyful. The tone spread over the water like sunshine, rippling across the surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the water stirred. We all took a step back. Something broke the surface, a pale shape. It was a hand, fingers thin as sticks, pushing through the water. Another hand followed, then arms, then a head. But this time, the creature was not mossy and monstrous. It was a woman, her hair long and dark, her skin translucent. Her eyes were deep pools reflecting the sky. She looked young and ancient, beautiful and terrifying. When she spoke, her voice was like the rush of the river over stones. "You wake me at noon," she said, each word dripping. "The world has changed since last I walked above. Yet your voices are the same, human, afraid, curious." The crowd froze. Reverend Mills made the sign of the cross. Mrs. Thompson fainted. "I ring a bell. You wake," I said, surprising myself with my steady voice. "At midnight, your bell calls our people. They walk to their deaths. We seek to end this." Her head tilted. "The bell at midnight is not mine. It belongs to the one who bound me. Long ago, before your town was built, my sisters and I guarded this river. We ensured the tides, the fish, the floods. We were worshipped with offerings. We kept balance. Then men came with axes and hammers. They cut trees, diverted water, and forged a bell of bronze and bone. They rang it at midnight to summon me. But when I answered, they bound me with iron chains and sealed me in the river, forcing me to ring the bell each night to lure them gifts, humans, to feed the creature they served, a thing older than the river, hidden in the caverns beneath." My stomach nodded. "What creature?" She shuddered. "A hunger, a mouth that is all mouth, a god that never had a name. When my sisters refused to worship it, they were killed. I was left to serve it. It slumbers sometimes, but when it wakes, I must wake too. I ring the bell, and you come. The creature feeds, and then we rest until the next cycle. I have rung that bell for centuries. You think you can end it with your iron?" "We have to try," I said. "What if we free you? If you are not bound, if you can leave, then the bell cannot be rung. The creature will starve." Her eyes narrowed. "You speak bravely for one who still smells of milk and fear. Many have tried to break my chains. Their bones line the riverbed. The chains are not of this world. They were forged in a fire that burns at the core of the earth. They bind not just my body, but my will. Only the one who forged them can break them, and he lies in the caverns beneath, asleep, dreaming of hunger." The weight of her words pressed down on us. A silence followed, broken only by the distant caw of a crow. "Then we must go to the caverns," Sheriff Barnes said, his jaw set. "We find this creature. We wake him. We bargain or threaten." "You will not survive," the river woman said. "The air down there is poison to you. The darkness is so complete, it eats the light from your torches. And the things that live there?" She shivered. "The bell's call protects you from them, because you are the offerings. If you go willingly, they will not respect the pact. You will become sport." "But if we do nothing," I whispered, "we keep losing people. Our town will be empty. We can't keep hiding." The river woman's eyes softened. "Your courage reminds me of my sisters. For that, I offer a warning. There are other bells. Your ancestors scattered them across the hills when they hid the first. If you find them and destroy them, the creature will be weakened. The bond will loosen. But I cannot promise freedom. I cannot promise safety. I can only give you hope." "Where?" I asked. "Where are the bells?" They were hidden in places that do not exist anymore. Beneath the schoolhouse that burned, under the oldest oak, inside the mouth of a stone lion that sits in the cemetery. in the hollow of a scarecrow that never rots. Wherever you hear whispers on a windless day, dig. Wherever water pools on a hill, listen. But know this: when the last bell is broken, the creature will wake fully. It will rise from the caves to feed. You will face it, or you will run. The crowd murmured. Fear and determination warred in their eyes. We will find them, I said, and we will break them. The river woman smiled, a sad, tired expression. Then may the current favor you. She sank back into the water, her hair floating like dark seaweed. The river closed over her head, leaving no ripple. We spent the next day searching. We dug under the ruins of the old schoolhouse and found a bell half melted by fire. We pried open the jaw of the stone lion in the cemetery and pulled out a tiny silver bell wrapped in black cloth. We climbed into haylofts and crawled into cisterns. Each bell was different, but all felt wrong, as though holding them made your heart beat off kilter. When we struck them, they did not ring. They screams. Their screams echoed in our dreams. Yet we kept breaking them, shattering metal that should not have snapped. With each one destroyed, the fog thinned, and the river receded slightly. Hope flickered in our hearts. On the seventh night, as we smashed the last bell, the one sewn into the scarecrow's chest, the ground trembled. The air turned cold. A sound rose from beneath the town, a low roar that shook dust from rafters and loosened stones in foundations. The Blackthorn River surged, spilling over its banks. People screamed. The sky turned the color of bruised flesh. The creature below had woken fully. We gathered at the river, weapons in hand, rifles, pitchforks, axes. The river boiled. Out of the churning water rose a shape so immense it blotted out the stars. It was neither fish nor serpent, neither human nor beast. Its skin glistened, covered in river mud and barnacles. Its mouth was a gaping abyss, ringed with needle teeth that spiraled inward. Eyes were scattered across its body, blinking independently. Slime dripped from its maw, sizzling where it hit the ground. As it rose, stones and trees clung to its back, uprooted by its ascent. It let out a cry that made our bones vibrate. "Steady!" Sheriff Barnes shouted, though his voice quavered. "Aim for the eyes!" We fired. Bullets thudded into thick hide and fell like raindrops. Axes bounced off scales. The creature roared and swung a tendril the size of an oak, sending people flying. Houses toppled into the floodwaters. For a moment, it seemed hopeless. Then, through the chaos, the river woman appeared, her figure shimmering. She rose on a pillar of water, her chains trailing behind like kelp. "Strike the bell!" she cried, and pointed to the brass bell in my hands. I lifted the bell with trembling arms. Its weight seemed greater now, as though filled with generations of expectation. I swung and rang it. The bell's tone cut through the creature's roar. It was a pure sound, bright as noon. The creature stiffened. Its many eyes rolled. It swung toward me, maw opening. Rows of teeth gleamed. I rang the bell again, stepping back, heart pounding. The creature shuddered. Cracks appeared along its skin, glowing with pale light. A howl tore from its throat, a sound of pain and protest. The river woman screamed something in a language that sounded like rushing water. The chains around her fell away. She surged forward, her hands glowing, and plunged them into the creature's eyes. The creature convulsed, knocking over the remaining houses.
People scattered. Water rose past our knees. I rang the bell a third time, each strike sending vibrations through the air. The creature's scream rose to a pitch that hurt. Its body began to dissolve, breaking apart like sand sculptures washed by waves. The mud and slime slid off, revealing something underneath, a skeleton made of reeds and stones, held together by despair. The skeleton crumbled. The creature's maw closed. With one last shudder, it collapsed back into the river, sending a wave that crashed against the far bank and splashed into the trees. The water calmed. The sky cleared. We stood in silence, drenched and shaking. Dead fish lay on the streets. The ruins of houses smoked. Families clung to each other, sobbing in relief and grief. The river woman hovered above the water, her hair dripping. "You have freed me," she said. "You have freed yourselves." The bells are broken, the bonds loosened. The creature is gone. But remember, balance is fragile. Do not take without giving. Do not build without blessing. Honor the river, and it will honor you. She bowed her head. Then she dissolved into droplets that sparkled in the sunlight and fell into the water. The river flowed on, steady and calm. The fog did not return. In the weeks that followed, we rebuilt. We planted trees and grasses along the riverbank. We carved wooden charms and hung them over doors, not as wards against curses, but as reminders to respect what had almost destroyed us. The old laws were rewritten, not out of fear, but out of reverence. We told our children the story of the midnight bell, not to scare them, but to teach them. We did not silence the river. We listened to it.
Yet sometimes, on foggy mornings, when the world is quiet and the river's current is slow, I hear a faint, distant bell. It is not a summons, but a memory, a reminder that some curses are broken not by strength, but by understanding. I rest my hand on the brass bell we hung in the town square, now shining in the sun, and smile. The midnight bell is silent. The river hums a gentle tune. And in our town of Willows Reach, the stories we tell are about survival, resilience, and the mysteries that can be solved when we dare to answer a call that no one else can hear.